You're listening to the Churchosity Podcast, where we talk about the Gen X take on church culture. You've got mail. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Churchosity Podcast. My name is Heath Brady, and I'm your host.
My name is Andrea Brady, and I'm your co-host.
We're just a couple of average, everyday Gen Xers trying the best we can to give our perspective on church culture. And this podcast is dedicated to the Gen X Christians.
You know, the ones that just want to keep it simple.
The ones who just want to live quiet, peaceable lives.
We represent the generation of Christians who sometimes looks at what others are doing and thinks, whatever. But as it says in 1 Timothy 1:5,
the goal of our instruction is love, from a pure heart and from a good conscience and from a sincere faith.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Amen. Speaking of a good conscience,
yes.
You know who doesn't have a good conscience?
Who?
Johnny from Cobra Kai.
Our new favorite show.
Oh my gosh, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot get enough of this show.
We actually binge watched season 4.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Couldn't stop watching it.
I want to watch it again.
You know what I think we should do?
What?
Is I think that one day when none of the kids are here,
Uh-huh.
and maybe we can convince our youngest daughter to take the dog away for the day, too.
Yeah.
You and I should sit and binge the whole show from season 1.
Oh, my goodness.
Go back. See where it all be. I don't know. Maybe not.
I am tempted to watch it from season 1.
Why do we love this show so much? It's so
I know,
corny.
It's awesome. It's so wonderful. It's great. I'm giddy. I love it so much. And when I sit down and it's so Gen X.
What makes it Gen X? What is it that makes it Gen X?
Bringing back those characters.
From the movies, right?
Yeah. And I think it's cute because you have Johnny, who was the bad boy.
Yeah, he was the guy that Danny
Yes.
LaRusso
Mm-hmm.
beat for the title in the first movie.
Right.
Right.
But actually, I think Johnny's the star.
Well, the show revolves around him.
Yeah, he's like the most intriguing, and he's rough around the edges, and everybody, I think you start rooting for him. He's like the best character.
Yeah, you're rooting for the bad guy through the whole entire show.
As a side note, I don't know if you're aware of the conspiracy or whatever that people were posting about the Karate Kid movies and how Danny was actually the bad guy.
Oh?
Yeah, people were talking about this several years ago before the Cobra Kai series came out. They were saying that Danny was actually the bad guy and we should actually feel sorry for Johnny.
How is Danny the bad guy? He was bullied by Johnny and all of the Cobra Kai people.
Or was he? I don't know. Some of the arguments that they made were pretty right on.
Oh, like when he goes to the Halloween party.
Yeah.
And Johnny goes into the bathroom, albeit to smoke a joint in the stall. And he puts the hose over the top of the stall and gets them all. So he kind of picked that fight.
Yes.
And brought it upon himself.
Yeah. And he got in the middle of the lovers' quarrel between Allie and Johnny on the beach in the first place. He was trying to be,
the hero.
Machismo.
Yeah. That is an interesting spin.
There's a lot more examples that they were giving. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting that people were talking about this a couple years ago before the Cobra Kai series came out. And it just kind of made everything... Maybe it was them trying to, like, get the juices flowing. Maybe
I could see that. Like, I think that show... I mean, the season 4 has been out since, like, right around Christmas or New Year's. Mm-hmm. And I think that it still is like one of the top 5 shows that's streamed on Netflix. I think it's still in the top 5. So
Yeah.
people are still watching
It's
it.
really good.
I'm not going to lie. I love, like, how nostalgic the show is.
Yeah.
Like you said, bringing back the old characters. So, like, you know, they've brought back Johnny, obviously, and Danny.
Yes.
They've brought back Allie, Elizabeth Shue's character, the infamous girlfriend
Yeah,
from
she
the
made
first
an
movie.
appearance
Yes.
in one of the seasons.
There's one episode, I think it was like, or a couple episodes. Yeah.
It was great.
The guy who Danny fought in Japan, I cannot think of his name now, his character's name. He's in the show.
Right. The girl from when she went to Japan.
Right. The girl in Japan, she made an appearance.
Danny's mom.
Danny's mom has been on the show. Obviously, Johnny's sensei is a main character on the show, the Sarge.
The guy who was the head of Cobra Kai.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then this season, season 4,
Yeah.
they brought back the ponytail from Karate Kid 3.
Oh my gosh.
Thomas Ian Griffith's character.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. It's like they got the band back together. I love it.
I love it too.
And like there are some parts about the show where I'm like, yeah, this is totally not realistic. Like
it's very cheesy sometimes.
Well, yeah, because like mysteriously there'll be a party at somebody's house and none of the parents are home. Like it's just weird to me.
Yeah, well, that's what makes it 80s, because like
true.
it's like an 80s movie.
It's those moments where the show gets a little campy.
Yeah.
I'll agree.
Yeah.
But you know what I especially love about the show?
What?
Is the music.
Yeah.
The soundtrack.
The music.
You're the best around, and nothing's ever gonna take you down. Oh my gosh, it's so amazing.
It was amazing. I
love the show. I can't get enough of it.
I mean, you can't beat 80s music, can you?
No, you can't. What are
They're still playing. People are still playing it. They're loving it. 80s, they're emulating it.
Our youngest daughter knows like all of the lyrics to all of the songs from when we were kids. Like I did not know. Like did she lock herself in her closet one weekend and learn all of the lyrics to the songs from the 80s?
I have no idea.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
It still is weird to me to think that my trifecta of favorite singers from the 80s have all passed away.
Right.
You know, we're talking about Michael Jackson, Prince, and George Michael. Like, they were my 3 favorite, singers from when I was a kid, and they're all not with us anymore. But, like, all of that 80s music, like, I know who your least favorite band is from the 80s.
Do you?
Tears for Fears.
Okay, well, they're all right.
Even though Everybody Wants to Rule the World is the greatest song to roller skate to.
Yeah. I don't know. It's that British invasion. That
second British invasion from the 80s.
I'm not really into it.
All of that new wave music that was synthesized.
Yeah, I'm not super into the new wave stuff.
Yeah.
Although I love Aha's Take on Me.
Oh, of course.
That was like my favorite song in the 7th grade.
You know why I think you love that song, though? I don't think you actually like the song by itself. I think you like the song because of the music video.
The music video was revolutionary.
Completely.
It was just an artistic... It was quite the creation.
It was like a cartoon.
Yeah, it was
that
great.
moved in real time.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked the video. Yes.
Yeah.
But...
Well, we're sitting here talking about
I'm so worldly.
You worldly woman, you. We're sitting here talking about all of this 80s nostalgia, and it's got me thinking about how the church tried to meddle in all of that.
Meddle?
Yeah, by coming up with their own version of contemporary music in the 80s.
You mean contemporary Christian music?
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, contemporary Christian music, which, of course, is relative because, like, if music is coming out next Tuesday, then that's essentially contemporary.
Right.
But when I say contemporary Christian music, I go back to my childhood. And I know that there was, like, Christian rock bands that existed before I was, old enough to listen to music in the 70s.
Well, I think, wasn't there a point where Christian music was called gospel, and then it suddenly changed to contemporary Christian music?
That's a good point.
Because I think that, like, maybe it happened in the 80s. I'm not certain, but I know that that's when things got really big.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. There was a period of time where quote-unquote Christian music was referred to as gospel music. And at some point, there was kind of like this fork in the road where gospel music became mainly... When I think of gospel music, there actually, I think, was a point in musical history in the church where gospel music went one way and contemporary Christian music went another way. Because I think of singers like Andre Crouch, you know, the guy who brought us the infamous song "To God Be the Glory." Mm-hmm. That genre of music is considered gospel.
Yeah.
But when you think about contemporary Christian music, that was like the churchy way of saying top 40 genre.
Yeah,
because because the contemporary Christian music industry had one goal and one goal alone, and that was to produce music that tried to talk about Jesus while sounding like secular music.
Yeah.
So you would have these bands that would come out that sounded or tried to sound an awful lot like non-Christian bands. And a lot of it was hot garbage, I'll be honest with you. But there were some who were revolutionary in their style, and there were some who just by luck happened to strike gold with what they were producing.
Guess what?
What?
Contemporary Christian music came out of the Jesus movement.
From the late 60s?
Yeah. So that's where it first started.
Right.
So it was probably started kind of like folky music. Maybe.
How many roads must a man walk down? Something like that.
Kumbaya, my lord.
Kumbaya. Yeah, probably. All those campfire songs.
Michael, row your boat ashore.
Hallelujah. Okay, we're making our listeners sick to their stomachs. Let's stop. Well, you know, a lot of our listeners don't know this about me.
Yeah.
But when I was a kid, besides growing up with a stepdad who traveled around the country in his band, there was a period of time where that whole career of his dried up.
Yeah.
And he ended up working for a Christian music label as a regional promotion manager for Word Records.
Oh, okay.
Now, a lot of people, especially if you're millennials or younger, have no idea what I'm talking about. And that's okay. We can't all be perfect. Back in the day, Word Records was the distribution label for most, if not all, the top contemporary Christian music artists and bands.
Like who?
Amy Grant.
Oh.
Amy Grant was on Myrrh Records, which was her record label, but Word Records was the distributive label who distributed her records.
Oh, okay.
Right?
I get it.
So, you know, like her Age to Age album was her first big one. And then after that was the Straight Ahead album. And then after that was the infamous Crossover album, which I'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
But, you know, because of my stepdad's job,
Yeah.
I was introduced to this whole genre of music that I had never known existed. And granted, I was only in the 7th grade. But at the same time, I had listened to a lot of music at that point. Like when we were kids, Andy, you remember, like we listened to top 40 music on KPLZ 101.5 or on Cube 93, which back in the day in Seattle was a top 40 station. Now it's a hip hop station.
Yeah.
But
it
if
doesn't
we
even exist anymore, I don't think.
But if we wanted to listen to hip hop music or rap music or R&B music when we were kids, that was an AM station. It was 1250
K-Fox, yeah.
And so, like, that was what we listened to as kids, right? Like, the popular music, that's what we listened to. There was no Christian music station back in the day. It didn't exist until
the 80s.
The 80s.
Right.
when Christian radio stations started popping up.
Let's see. In Seattle, it was 105.3.
Which now is called Spirit 105.3 FM, but back in the day it was KCMS.
KCMS, that's right.
And they had an AM affiliate, which was KCIS. That's right.
They were affiliated with Christa Ministries, weren't they?
Yeah, Christa Ministries, that's correct.
Up in Seattle.
Mm-hmm. So, like, I had never heard of Amy Grant, and she was like the star when my stepdad got his job. I mean, there were other contemporary Christian music singers and bands and stuff, but none was more popular than Amy Grant. And then came people like Michael W. Smith, who for a while was touring with Amy Grant on her Age to Age tour as her piano player. So like he would open for her, but he was not quote unquote famous yet back then. Then there were several others. Like there was a band called the Imperials, and then they had a split, and one of the guys from the original Imperials, his name was Russ Taff. He went solo.
I remember Russ Taff.
And his big first hit was We Will Stand. You're my brother, you're my sister. That song.
Okay.
And then, like he went huge. So like and I learned all of this and experienced all of this firsthand while being my stepdad's sidekick in the 7th and 8th and 9th and 10th grade. But when I was in the 9th grade, there was a lot of emerging contemporary Christian artists. Not just on Word Records, but also on Sparrow Records.
Okay.
And Sparrow Records had artists like Stephen Curtis Chapman.
Oh, he was my favorite.
And we were not allowed to listen to him in our home.
What?
Well, because he was the chief competitor with artists like Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith.
Oh, my goodness.
So one year, my stepdad got together with a guy who was his manager when he was touring around the country in his band, and they put on a Christian music festival in Enumclaw, Washington called Summerfest.
Okay.
And at Summerfest, it was like a 2 or 3 day, I think it was 2 days. It was a 2-day festival, and it had all of these Christian bands and singers that all ascended on this country fairgrounds and played concerts for 2 days.
Huh.
And there were all of these bands that were on Word Records and also on Sparrow Records that I had never heard of. This was the first place that I heard the band called The Allies.
Okay.
Their lead singer is a guy by the name of Bob Carlyle.
Mm-hmm.
He has the famous song Butterfly Kisses.
Okay.
So, like, I had the opportunity for the better part of 4 years to just be immersed in this contemporary Christian music culture.
That must have been awesome.
I mean, it was in the sense that, here I am, a 12, 13-year-old kid, and I'm backstage at all of these concerts at sold-out arenas for these contemporary Christian singers and bands. I mean, we're talking people like Michael W. Smith, Amy Grant, Sandy Patty, Mylon Lefevre, Russ Taff, the Imperials, Randy Stonehill. I even got to go to see Stryper.
Oh, wow.
And go backstage on their first tour in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was pretty cool. As a kid, you just eat that up, right?
Right.
But what's unfortunate about all of that is that I got to see these people for who they really were behind the scenes. And I'm not going to run anybody's name through the mud here, but I will tell you how unfortunate it was for me, because a lot of these people became my heroes. Mm-hmm. And then to walk around the corner and see them talking or acting in an unbecoming way, it was very unfortunate for me. Mm-hmm. And I lost all kinds of respect for these people. Mm-hmm. And they would say things, they would do things, and then they would go out on stage and sing songs about Jesus. And on a previous episode, we talked about integrity. Mm-hmm. At an early age, I learned what integrity was not.
It wasn't that.
By being immersed in this contemporary Christian music culture scene. The first really horrible experience that I had, and for those of you who don't know, I cannot stand contemporary Christian music.
After all that?
After all of that, I cannot stand it. And there's a lot of reasons why.
Okay.
And that's really what I want to talk about here on this episode, is why I think contemporary Christian music is an offense to God.
Whoa.
I really do. The first real eye-opening experience that I had was when Amy Grant did her crossover album, the infamous Unguarded album.
Baby, Baby?
No, it was before that.
Oh.
This was the album that had the song Find a Way. You know, love will find a way.
Oh, yeah, Find a Way. Mm-hmm.
Got all kinds of secular radio play, right?
Got it. Yeah.
And it was like the most worldly thing that Amy Grant had ever done. And there was all kinds of controversy. You name it. Mm-hmm. Well, anyhow, she came to the Seattle area on the Unguarded tour, and she had a meet and greet op at a Christian bookstore. And because of my stepdad's job, we got to be there for that. I watched. I saw things, the way that she was treated, and the way that the industry people treated her, and how it just was so overwhelming for her and overbearing for her. And then that night she had to go on stage and perform a concert and pretend like everything was honky-dory. And I think I was in the 8th grade when that happened. And I just remember walking away from that experience and thinking to myself, okay, there's something not right here.
Because it's a business.
It's a business. It's a business.
Mm-hmm.
There's another time. There's another contemporary Christian artist from that time who was quite the big deal, whose name I will not give, that had a concert at the Fifth Avenue Theater in Seattle, and 3/4 of the venue did not sell. The place was empty.
Oh, dear.
And I remember very, very vividly of this artist out in the lobby of the theater, pacing back and forth, ranting and raving to my stepdad, to his tour manager, you name it, about how he was not going to go on stage with his band because nobody was there to see him preach the gospel in his music.
I see. Ugh.
And there's just so many experiences like that I could tell. I mean, I could tell you tons of experiences because of my exposure to the contemporary Christian music industry. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you, there are some needles in a haystack of authentic dudes and dudettes from that scene. One of them was my guy, Michael W. Smith.
Yeah.
The first time I ever saw Michael W. Smith perform was at that festival that my stepdad and his old tour manager put on.
Uh-huh.
It was called Summerfest. I was about 15 feet away from him, standing backstage watching them perform. I had never heard their band before. And
Wow.
This is back with the OGs in his band. This is Mark Heimerman, Wayne Kirkpatrick, Chris Harris, Chris Rodriguez, and Dan Huff, the OG band of his.
Oh.
I was blown away by these people.
Very, very talented.
Oh, and they were just some of the most neatest people. Mm-hmm. I got to spend time with every single one of those guys in the band. Fast forward a year and a half later, Michael W. Smith comes out with his Big Picture album and goes on tour. And my stepdad and my brother and I get to spend a day with him and his band doing a signing. And
cool.
And we spent the day on the ferry together. Mm-hmm. And I got to hang out with these guys. They were the real deal.
That's exciting.
To this day, I mean, I could tell you story after story after story of where I've crossed paths with Michael W. Smith. He has made a lasting impression on me. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you.
What?
There came a point in the Christian music industry where they made this weird left turn because pop music wasn't selling.
Uh-huh.
Venues were not selling tickets like they were in the 80s. And I noticed this start to really take form in the mid to late 90s. And this is when the contemporary Christian bands of the day were starting to focus on singing worship songs.
Oh, interesting.
And so like bands like Third Day
Yeah.
would go on tour and they would sing worship songs in part of their set. It wasn't all they were performing, but it was part of what their song set was. And so in the late 90s to early 2000s, there was this trend that started where contemporary worship songs that were being sung in churches started being attractional for the younger generation. And so other bands, not just Third Day, but lots of other bands started basically having worship songs as their concert set and selling tickets for people to come watch them perform these.
Oh, I see.
I was so appalled by that because I'm thinking to myself, we go to church on Sundays and we worship Jesus. And this is not the conversation of contemporary music versus hymns. That's not what we're talking about here. Just as a side note. But we go to church and we sing songs, whether they're hymns or contemporary worship choruses, doesn't matter. But that's part of our worship service. And there are artists, singers, songwriters, bands, whatever, out there in the industry that are selling out arenas. People are paying a fortune to go sit and watch these singers and bands perform these same songs. Now, there is a huge difference between worship and entertainment.
Okay.
And I just think that it's gross that I'm going to pay money to go watch and be entertained by a band and have that masquerade as worship.
I see.
Because it's not that.
What do you think the differences between contemporary Christian music and worship music?
Well, I think that that's relative to the listener and to the worshiper. But basically, a song that is a worship song, whether it's a hymn or, Ephesians and Colossians give us identifiers for what those are, songs, hymns, and spiritual songs. So whether it's a contemporary Christian band's song, a contemporary worship song, a spiritual hymn, whatever it might be, what it really boils down to, in my opinion, is who is at the center of the song and what is the purpose of singing it. And we can get into the whole conversation about worship and what that means on a different episode at some point. But if I'm paying money to go to a venue where music is being played, even if they're going to do some rendition of It Is Well With My Soul, I'm still paying for entertainment. I'm paying for somebody to perform a worship song.
I see what you mean. These people are performing something that's supposed to be worshiping Jesus and wanting to get paid for it.
Right.
Got it.
It's pay me my money while masquerading as I'm leading a worship service.
I see.
And if you need a metaphor for what I was exposed to back in the 80s in the Christian music industry, it's that. That you have people who want their paycheck masquerading as being ministers of the gospel. And we've spent all kinds of time, in our previous episode talking about being celebrities and chasing celebrityhood and all that stuff. Let me just tell you, the only difference between the Christian music industry and the secular music industry is the lyrics in some of the songs. Because it's still an industry.
Yeah.
There is money to be made. There is fame and fortune to be chased. And just like the secular music industry, there's a shelf life to every artist.
Oh, man.
And there are a lot of has-beens still trying to be relevant.
Oh, jeez.
And it's pretty gross.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's not to say that there weren't ever any bands or singers from the Christian music industry that served a purpose and preached the gospel. I mean, they did.
Yeah.
You
and
know,
there are a lot of good songs out there.
There really are. There really are a lot of good songs. And I'm not here to say that as a whole contemporary Christian music is garbage. However, maybe I'm just jaded.
Yeah.
Because of my experience, and I know what I saw and what I heard.
It's kind of hard being behind the scenes on something like that, and you know.
Yeah, you know, when people say you don't know what you don't know, there's a lot of bliss in being ignorant.
Yeah.
Isn't that the saying? Ignorance is bliss?
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of times, believe me, where like I'll be hanging out with one of my buddies and they'll, you know, pull up something on their Spotify from back in the day and I can't enjoy it because of who it is that I'm listening to. And instantly I'm taken back to a memory of something that I saw or something that I heard or something I experienced.
Right.
And it's unfortunate, you know, and not to duplicate anything we've talked about on a previous episode, but ladies and gentlemen, as ministers of the gospel, not just in the music industry, but in general, integrity is everything.
Yeah.
Because there are some Christian singers that are still trying to be relevant to this day who I have no time or patience for because of things that I experienced near them when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that I didn't know the things that I know. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the positives of the Christian music scene, though.
Okay.
You want to know what my greatest contemporary Christian music song of all time is?
There's a greatest.
In my opinion.
What is it?
Rocket Town by Michael W. Smith.
Oh.
I don't care how many times I see or hear him play that song. It still gets me all stirred up on the inside.
Wow.
It's essentially a song, lyrically speaking, about a person's encounter with Christ.
Huh.
And how Christ radically affected and changed their life. It's almost like, you know, Paul on the road to Damascus experience.
Uh-huh.
You know, like this person has an encounter with Jesus.
Yeah.
And the music, I mean, everything about it. I mean, it's just, it's my favorite contemporary Christian music song of all time. And it's from like 1985.
Wow. I mean, you have a lot more knowledge and you listen to Christian music a lot more than I have.
Yeah, probably.
In your life.
And that's probably because of my stepdad's job.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I have a handful of songs and things that I like, but...
Like what?
Nowhere near as much as you. Well, I think I've mentioned it before. I really like Stephen Curtis Chapman.
Saddle up your horses.
Well, that is not the song that...
Oh, it's not?
No.
Oh, well, I like that one.
I mean, it's a good song, but that's not... I like Way Beyond the Blue.
Oh, yes.
And then my little known song that I like is In This Little Room.
Oh, we talked about this on a previous episode.
We did.
That's right.
Yep. And I like Michael W. Smith a lot. If you were to ask me what is my favorite song of his,
Please don't say Friends.
It is definitely not Friends.
The way that he talks about that song, he's like, this song just refuses to die. Everybody loves that song. And it's a good song from 40 years ago.
Hey, you can't talk. Your favorite song's from 40 years ago, too.
That's true. I don't think that Michael and Debbie had any idea whatsoever that groovy little tune was going to like live forever.
So I think because of your influence with your stepdad, etc., and being exposed to all of that makes you pay more attention to who sings what song and what their names are and all that stuff. But like, I'll put together a playlist in Spotify for songs that I like, but I don't really pay much attention to who sings them.
That's because...
Am I weird?
No, but it's also because ignorance is bliss.
I guess.
You know, and to be fair, even today, right now in 2022, there are contemporary Christian music bands that I have never heard of.
Oh, yeah.
And they're putting out music that, to be fair, and this is why I can't stand contemporary Christian music, it sounds just like the stuff that you hear on the regular stations.
That's true.
And now they don't even say Jesus or God or mention salvation or even preach the gospel. Now it's all feel-good music.
Oh, it is?
Oh, yeah. There's even a station up in the Pacific Northwest here that plays all of that music. It's called K-Love.
K-Love?
Yeah, K-Love.
Oh, dear.
Because all we need is love.
Right.
And play songs by bands that I've never heard of that sound like bands that are on other stations. But what are some of the Christian songs that you like, honey?
One of the songs I really like is Lion and the Lamb.
Oh, is that the Big Daddy Weave song?
Yeah.
That is a good song.
I really like that song.
That is a great song.
See,
they're not all bad.
No. Well, I have a couple of Hillsong songs on here.
Not Hillsong.
Don't crucify me, please. I like Oceans.
Oh, it's such a beautiful song.
It is. I think so.
That's a tough one because, like, that wades in the water of controversy because it's Hillsong.
Wading in the ocean.
Right. You call me out upon the waters.
Yeah. I'm really not an aficionado of contemporary Christian music like you are.
You're a big fan of old DC Talk stuff.
Oh, dear. Yeah, I like DC Talk.
Like the Jesus Freak album.
Yeah. Oh, my.
That's a good album.
That was a good album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, in my opinion, when DC Talk stopped doing their wannabe rap music and started actually doing music, they were actually good.
Yeah. There were, I went a couple of years to Jesus Northwest.
That was the big Christian music festival that happened in Vancouver, Washington, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So I never made it to Summerfest. I
Well,
was too young, probably.
Summerfest was kind of like the disowned child of Jesus Northwest. It was a wannabe Jesus Northwest. White Heart.
Yeah, White Heart.
They were pretty big in the 80s.
They were. And I can't remember anybody else, to be honest.
Well, here's all I'm trying to say, ladies and gentlemen. I think that there was a big movement. I want to say it was Daryl Mansfield that had the song, "Why Should the Devil Have All the Good Music?"
No.
And there was like this crusade to build and bolster the contemporary Christian music industry. Mm-hmm. The momentum that seems to have always been building behind that very thing, the contemporary Christian music industry, is the desire to look and sound like the world.
Right.
And honestly, that is the number one reason why I cannot stand contemporary Christian music, is because of that very thing. At the end of the day, it's about dollar signs. It's about butts in chairs at concerts. It's about merchandise. And it's no different than the secular music world. And you know, Scripture is kind of clear, in my opinion, from the Apostle Paul, where he says, "Do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God?" When the contemporary Christian music industry is masquerading as a gospel-centered ministry, but in all actuality is trying to mirror the world, who are they really friends with? With Jesus or with the world?
Right. There's a conflict there.
I mean, one of the pioneers of Christian music was a guy by the name of Keith Green.
Yeah.
And Keith Green was a worldly pagan man and found Jesus while on tour performing Christian music. He wrote Christian songs and wasn't even saved.
Oh, dear.
There's a book called No Compromise that's written by his widow that tells the story of him being on tour with his band, and not only does he give all of his music away for free while on tour, one night him and his band are staying at a hotel, and he wakes up in the middle of the night and goes and knocks on every single one of their doors in the hotel just to wake them up and tell them he just got saved.
Oh, wow.
But his music was amazing. One of the things that I admired the most about him and his career was that fact that he wrote songs about the Lord and didn't charge people admission for his concerts and didn't charge people a penny for his music. And he didn't sell any merchandise. You know, it's an industry.
Yeah.
And it grosses me out. What grosses me out the most about it, though, is how that stuff can infiltrate into the church and be part of a worship service. You know?
Yeah.
I asked the question that I always ask about stuff like this that seems so worldly. How is Jesus put on display? How is the gospel preached? How is God receiving the glory in any of that?
Well, I suppose as the listener, God can receive the glory despite their selfishness or their greed. If it's a good song and you're listening to it and it edifies you as a Christian.
Or if you're a non-believer and you hear the song and it contains the authentic gospel message in the lyrics, and that, you know, quickens the soul of the unbeliever and they give their life to the Lord in that moment. Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, God can still work through it.
I guess that I just have pretty high standards for what I think is good Christian music.
I guess so.
Well, you know, at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, I think that we in the church need to always be on guard and do a stellar job of keeping watch over what we put in front of us and what we listen to, because Scripture tells us that the devil roams about like a lion, seeking whom he may devour. And I think that there are just too many false representations of Christian doctrine and theology contained in songs that can distract people from the truth of the gospel and the truth of the conviction of sin and the truth of wanting to live victorious lives for the sake of the cross, for the sake of the gospel, and ultimately to bring glory to God with our very lives. I worry that so many of these artists and so many of these bands are in it for the fame and fortune and glory, and God forbid any of their fans should ever go through what I went through and have the pleasure or displeasure of seeing or experiencing things that are not very good, because it ruins the experience. Keep watch over your ears. Keep watch over your eyes. Oh, be careful, little ears, what you hear. And if you would like any recommendations for what I would consider, quote, good Christian music, please feel free to reach out to us, because I have plenty of suggestions and good ideas for you. But I can promise you one thing. The majority of the stuff that is on the radio today is really, really not all that edifying for you.
That ain't it.
That ain't it.
And that's all we have to say about that.
Thank you once again for listening to another episode of the Churchosity Podcast, the show where we try to give you the Gen X take on church culture. And thank you once again to my amazing co-host.
Thank you. Be sure to follow us on all the socials. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our handle is @ChurchosityPod. Drop us a message and give us your feedback. We'd really love to hear from you.
And if you're listening to this episode on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, please be sure to give us a rating and leave some feedback about the show. This not only helps promote the show and spread the word about the show, but it also makes it easier for others to find Churchosity Podcast. And also, don't forget to tell a friend about what we're doing here on the Churchosity Podcast.
Yeah, let them be a part of the conversation too.
But always remember that the goal of our instruction is love.
From a pure heart.
And from a good conscience.
And a sincere faith.
So we thank you all once again for listening, and we'll catch you next time on another episode of the Churchosity Podcast. Peace.